journey of creation that's filled with endless possibilities. Searching, exploring for that one perfect moment.
Practicing your cinematography and getting better as a filmmaker is a difficult process. But how do you develop your filmmaking skills if you don't necessarily have anything to practice them with? In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how you can practice your cinematography skills wherever you are and be a better filmmaker today. What makes a good cinematographer? This could be a number of things from communication to education, but the main things is experience and practice. When I started, I remember getting stuck at times because I wasn't necessarily getting work, and that meant I couldn't practice my skills. The number one thing that 90% of filmmakers aren't doing is practicing their cinematography skills. This could be recreating shots from movies, shooting comedy sketches with family and friends, or just shooting common household items and highlighting them as product videos. This is something I did naturally, but what I didn't realize is I was setting myself apart from people at my level by practicing and fine-tuning my skills. This helped me understand lighting, camera settings, focal lengths, and so much more. We're going to look at a recent commercial that we did for Frameset, and I'm going to show you exactly how you can practice your cinematography skills at home. So a little preface about this project. It was intended to be a commercial to basically inspire people to practice cinematography at home. This was shot at the apartment I'm currently renting with my partner, and we took the day to shoot a commercial with me as the subject and Justin and Jason helping me as well. So this is one of those things where, you're not necessarily practicing your cinematography by yourself, but with friends as well. But all these shots can be achieved by yourself. It just takes a little bit more time. We wanted to shoot so many different scenes to show you guys in a day, and this was just fast tracking this process in terms of setting your focal length, setting the composition with somebody else, and everything like that. So your biggest tool in your arsenal when filming or practicing your cinematography is using the natural daylight or anything that you have to build out your composition as well as build depth. And this is what I'm going to be looking at, and mainly in these examples is to show you exactly how you do that. And in this example here, we're looking at the basis of building a frame in a frame. This whole commercial was supposed to be very moody and very dark, and that is typically my style and our style at Tenfold. This is more of a silhouetted shot, but we do have enough information in the room where it's not completely blacked out and silhouetted. And the first thing that I'm going to look at is the composition of this. So obviously I am in center frame, but I am already built out in a frame, which just draws your attention to what we want to be focusing at. It's actually me walking out here. And then in terms of depth, we have multiple layers that we can see here in terms of we have what's inside the room, which is these curtains here, as well as the other side of the wall, and then the other side of this couch here. So that is our first layer of depth. And then we have me, which is the center frame here, and then have another layer of depth with this railing, and then everything that is outside. And then this just goes into infinity with the buildings as well as the sky and everything here. So this was just mainly planning in terms of time of day. Luckily, my windows face east, so we get a nice sunrise, but we're shooting this mainly at sunset. And what happens is because the sun is on the opposite side, we get these nice pastels and everything in the sky, which you can kind of see. And because now the sun is not necessarily in frame, it gives me a nice overcast look because the sun is actually on the other side, which is the west. So this is just how you practice without basically using any lights or any gear. This is just having a camera and then choosing your focal length to provide that compression or anything that you're looking for to build out your scene. The next thing that we're going to be looking at is this morning wake up. So the way you allow the viewer to experience the time of day is generally with colors. Usually early mornings, nights, or anything like that are these deep blue colors. Obviously, I'm getting out of bed, so this is the morning and we wanted to convey that. And again, this is just another composition technique where we have a frame with inside a frame. So that is shooting through doorways or shooting through anything that you can develop this depth and interest. So this is my frame that I'm going to be looking at. And then there's another technique in here, which a lot of people wouldn't catch, but is positioning myself on a thirds inside a frame. So if I were to draw an imaginary grid here into 3 equal quadrants, we have positioned myself on the third inside of this frame as well. So that's just something to consider in addition to finding frames within a frame. And then this was shot all with natural daylight, and the window that we just looked at before is off to the right here. So this is a big window source, and we wanted to develop more contrast contrast and more depth. So if we had a bunch of light spilling onto here, it wouldn't be very interesting and my eyes would automatically go to that if I had any light here. So what we did is we just closed the blinds. There's blinds on each side of the windows, and that allowed all the room and everything, and just turning off all the lights here, all house lights, just to be dark and have enough information still, because we're dealing with white walls, luckily, that you can see the details that we're actually shooting into another room. And luckily, like I said before, we are dealing with a overcast day, so we just have this naturally soft light coming through here, and then we kind of shape that even more with these blinds that are here, and it just gave us enough output. And then we just changed our camera settings in terms of white balance. So I believe we're shooting this at 3200 Kelvin, and this gives us that naturally blue look, and then you could push this additionally in post. So this is just positioning yourself in terms of a composition as well as where the natural light sits in this frame. If we were to erase some of this stuff and then just look at in terms of a lighting aspect, we have our light source, which is here, which is naturally going to backlight me a nice checkerboard of color. That's what we're always looking for, provide a nice checkerboard of lights. What always we're looking for in terms of cinematographers as develop contrast and interest in our image. So we have a nice light portion here, a nice light portion on my back, which is actually bouncing off this wall here. And then if we look at the shadow, my whole back here is shadows. This is just giving me a natural checkerboard and also a bunch of separation from the background so I don't get lost. That's those interests of light patches here that we can see, but it also adds to this image and kicks me out a little bit more in terms of adding separation. So again, no lights, just purely composition and playing what we have in the scene to make it feel as natural as possible. Next scene here, this is the main driver of the piece where I'm throwing the ball against the wall. And again, this is a setup where we didn't use any lights either. This is us using the natural light that is available in the room. Unfortunately, this location doesn't have any like interesting walls or anything like that. Shooting locations with white walls is super annoying, but that's just something that you have to play with and sometimes adds to your scene as well in terms of lighting. So again, this is just us placing me naturally in terms of where the most interest is I'm going to get on lighting a subject. So if I were to draw like an overhead view of this is the camera pointing into this direction, and this is where all the light is coming from. So naturally, this is going to develop some shadow on this side, which is camera side that we always want to shoot in. And then I'm sitting here, and this is going to give me that natural contrast. Because we're dealing with white walls everywhere, we're gonna bounce a lot of this light and it's gonna bounce directly onto me. So this is what we're gonna exactly look at right now. So we have that natural light coming in, and it's very diffused because it's an overcast day. If this was any harsher, it might just give a different look in terms of being a bright sunny morning or anything like that. We're playing up on the loneliness and isolation and being in my thoughts. So this really worked in terms of what we were trying to convey. And then in terms of the room, you can see that this is naturally spilling onto the couch. It gives me some interest onto these pillows, giving me those highlights that we're looking for, as well on the back of the couch and this white wall. So what the white wall is actually acting as is that light is bouncing here and then also bouncing onto my subject, which is myself here, to give me a nice edge or rim light. And then you can see that we have my face here, nice highlights, not super soft, but soft enough to give it off that it's naturally lit. And then if you look here very slightly, I have that triangle that we're looking for in terms of giving my interest across that face. And then because we were dealing with a bunch of white walls and everything like that, there was a lot of fill coming back on my side. So what we did is we just used a small flag. Any black material you can buy black material off Amazon, or you can just hang a black shirt or even place one of these black pillows here. And then we have that on the shadow side or camera side to add some contrast back into the image. So if we were to look at like light, equals L, and then dark equals D, and we look at this checkerboard, I have this edge light coming from the bounced light, and that's my light, and then I have my dark face, and then I have the light here, and then the dark on the nose, and then light here, and then going back into the interest of the background, which has so many different pockets of different qualities, types of light, soft, harsh, and everything, and that gives us that visual interest and everything like that. Obviously, when you're shooting yourself, there's a lot of things that you don't catch in terms of like my lips are chapped, I need to brush my beard out a bit, I could iron my shirt. But the main thing going back into this is the whole concept of why we shot this commercial, to practice our cinematography skills and shooting ourselves in terms of what looks that we want to create in terms of the space we have as well as the gear that we have available. The next shot that we're going to be looking at is pretty interesting, and this was to develop a different shot variety in the edit. We wanted to do this pacing thing where I'm going back and forth in terms of these spaces and everything, and building up the tension in terms of what we like to do in terms of the edits and shooting style that we incorporate in Tenfold. And we did this with the slow shutter effect. This is something I'm going to be covering in another video because I could dive into so much of it. But the interest here comes in having such a wide shot and to have different pockets and pools of light that we can pull naturally. This is the bigger version of the room that you can see here in terms of where we've been shooting. The bedroom here is on the left, and this is the main sitting area where we shot the spine of the piece. And the main thing that I'm going to be just talking about here is camera positioning in terms of composition, as well as where we can add pockets and interest of light. So just looking at the lighting aspect of it, we have our big source here, which is our diffuse light, and then we just add interest by closing those shutters. And then we have another pool of light over here, which is just me turning on the microwave, which is the natural light in here. So we didn't use any lights, just using the room into your advantage. And then we turn off the lights everywhere, and luckily it just worked out in terms of this just gives us a naturally cinematic look because we're shooting into the light part of this room. That's what you always want to do when you walk into any location or anything like that. And then the light just coming off here just paints a bunch of light here, and then the shape of light just coming in here, as well as some highlights on those things as well. Now, this was a push in, and we wanted to feel like what we're uncomfortably moving into the space to, you know, convey more emotion and everything like that. I like to do these on like a 45-degree angle. So if we were to look in terms of this room from a top view, and then the camera is facing here. If I had my camera over here, this would be super flat and uninteresting. Yeah, you could develop depth with the table and everything. In terms of the shot that we actually wanted to create, the biggest or the greatest amount of distance is going to be from the corner to the corner. And this is also going to enhance by having a wider lens, and now you can see the details of how the walls operate. The textures everywhere, everything just moves differently when you're going at a diagonal angle, because we have a bunch of straight lines in the room facing this way. That means if I'm moving through it, I'm actually moving through the space, and there's a bigger conception of the room is bigger. There's a lot more depth. There's a lot more interest. So this is just something to consider when you want to dolly through spaces or anything like that. There is something to be said in terms of going straight on, in terms of going on walls, if that's something that you want to convey. And that was seen in this image here. Obviously, if you compare these are two different shots, but this can be considered flat if we compare it to this image, because there is a lot more going on in terms of these all interesting lines. And this is just due to the camera position because we're not flat up against it. So just something to consider if you're looking to do dollies into spaces and everything like that. Now, this is the last shot I'm going to be looking at in this specific breakdown, but this one was interesting because I used a bunch of lights, and this was actually shot on another day with my partner. She helped me out a lot with this, and we wanted to play with different colors of lights as well as to just add more interest. And these were just all small lights. We were using the Zhiyun 5-ray as well as a couple Aperture MCs, and I love these lights because you can put them anywhere. You can stick them up with gaff tape, and especially on metal surfaces, they both have magnetic backgrounds. So if you look at this in terms of the lighting, we have a small light back here, and that's an Aperture MC set at like 3200 Kelvin. That's like the warmest they go. We could have done with a colored look, but we just wanted to develop contrast by having the blues and the oranges. So that just stuck up with a magnet and just shooting down and just giving some intense highlights there. This would seem natural because you would have a light over the stove or underneath the microwave. So this felt very natural to us. And then we have another Aperture MC, and that's set to the same color temperature as the one over here, because this is going to be my motivated light. Because we have some orange in the room that we obviously see, that is going to light my subject, which is myself. And then to get some blue appearing in the shadows, we had another Aperture MC, and this was pointed at a wall so it would bounce back and be a little bit more softer and less sourcier. We had that set at 6600 Kelvin or something in that range. If I consider my camera's white balance, it's at 5600 Kelvin. So this is going to be my daylight balance, right? And this is just using white balance as a creative tool. If you're interested in actually seeing a video where I explain white balance, there's a whole video linked in the description. My higher values of Kelvin are going to appear bluer, and then my lower values of Kelvin are going to appear more orange. And then finally, we had another light, which was the 5-ray light. What I love about these lights is that they have little barn doors and everything, so you can shape the light a lot more. And this was set at 3200 Kelvin. And this was to just shoot right here and give us that last pocket of orange. So this is naturally developing a checkerboard of light and dark, as well as complementary colors to give you more contrast. In the background, I have that orange light to motivate the light that's on me. So I have that orange, the dark, the light part of my face, which is that, orange when it looks a little neutral. And then to add more room tone to look a little bit more blue, we use that light that's bounced off of the wall. And then to add another stripe of color, we have that little light putting that in the last corner. So it's always taking a step back and looking at your images and like, how can I develop more of a pattern here? How can I develop more interest? And this is something I like to do in my work, is just to add little pockets of light. We just released a new set of LUTs that was used to color this project, as well as a lot of our other commercial work. These LUTs will transform your log footage in one simple click. Check out the link below to find out more. If you found this video interesting and want to learn about the one thing that made our filmmaking 10 times better, click on this video here.